when I had made a video about reading scriptures to your kids, somebody had asked me this question or made a statement. I don't know how I feel about this video after seeing all the deconstruction videos of adults when they were children being pressured into Christianity. And then I recently made a video saying that male church leaders who have prodigal children, they need to step down from leadership. And so from that, you can just imagine all of the discussion that went on. And so I have some very strong views on prodigal children, on children who are leaving the church, and I am not focusing at all on the child because I'm not talking about them. I am talking about the parents who are responsible for them, the parents who raised them, and what may have happened. And I talk about this, so I'm 48. I have been, in some capacity, I love kids. And so I've been working with kids since I was 9. As soon as I was 9, I would start volunteering in the church nursery. Then by 11, 12, I started babysitting on my own. And then I've worked in daycares, preschools. I've been a nanny. It's just all of my observations. Obviously, I've been a children's pastor, a youth pastor. I have served in those capacities in churches. I've led girls' Bible studies and teachers' Bible studies, all of these things. And then I homeschooled my kids, and I'm a therapist now. So with all of that, I have some really strong views on it. People can argue with me, but this is just how I feel, okay? I feel like there's always a reason. It can't be 100% because I think about Adam and Eve, and they had the perfect father, and they even rebelled. I get that, and I see it. So even in perfection, we have free will, we have choice. I recognize that. But I am talking from the perspective of a child. As a child looking in at other people's families, there have always been sin on the part of the parents. Are they sinful creatures? Yes, but they need to change. If you are stumbling your children, and the Bible says that if you stumble one of these little ones, you might as well have a millstone tied around your neck and be drowned in the depths of a sea. Obviously, there's responsibility then that God is placing on the adults around them. And so then when I see these deconstruction videos, it breaks my heart. I hear what they're saying. I am never going to argue with a prodigal adult. I'm just not going to. That's just not the way that I work. That's not what I'm thinking. They're already in a bad place. They don't need people arguing with them. What they need is love. What they need is compassion. What they need is patience and empathy. And even within the Catholic Church, with all of their scandals and the terrible things that they've done to children, how can we not recognize that? And so if the kids have left the Catholic Church, they had very good reason to. And whose fault is that? Is it because they had free will? No, the adults did terrible things to them that need to be recognized and repented for. And so that's why I'm not going to name anybody, because I am not trying to pile on to these adult children who have left. But there are 2 people that I am thinking about specifically. One whose adult son is extremely vocal. Another one who was within the homeschool community that we all had more of a window into his life. And so when I look at even those family structures and the little bit that we've had this look into their life, I see things. Maybe it's because I just work with kids and they tell me about their frustrations. I have no idea. But I see things that the parents have done. I'm not saying that if you changed it that the kids would have changed. But in the end is that it says, if a father, and it's so funny because the scriptures talks about, it's always the father. Fathers, do not aggravate your children or they will become discouraged. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord, in Colossians and Ephesians. And so they're always talking to the father. The Bible's always talking to the scripture in that. And then if you look at even examples within scripture, then a lot of people will be like, what about King David? His son rebelled and he was king and he did a lot of wrong things, okay? His own life was just rift with sin. He was an adulterer, a murderer. he was just not a nice person in so many ways. I mean, even with Abigail's husband, I can't remember, Nathan was that? I can't remember his name. But Abigail's husband, and how just because he didn't do what David wanted, even if it was right, and he was being very selfish, you can't just go and kill everybody. It's just things like that. And then, of course, with Bathsheba, the sin that he committed, killing Bathsheba's husband, who was one of his closest friends. I mean, this guy was someone that went with David into the wilderness as he was leaving Saul behind, as he was escaping from Saul. Like, he was such a committed friend. And the reason why David could look over and see Bathsheba on top of her house was because this guy was such a close confidant that David trusted him to live that close to the palace. And yet David had him killed. And I think about that because when Uriah was killed, he was put at the front of the battle where it was like a given that he was going to die. I mean, like, was he thinking at all? Like, what's going on? Why is he doing this to me? Like, I'm a seasoned soldier. Why would he put me in the front? Yet he did it, and he died. Okay? So this is the kind of person David is. So then he, for whatever reason, does not feel like or does not want to even discipline his own sons. So you've got Amnon, I think it is, who rapes his half-sister Tamar. Then Tamar's brother, Absalom, is pissed. And David ignores the whole situation. He just takes his daughter aside, puts her away, and because she's now not a virgin, back then, like, she had no life and she was just going to have to live like just a single woman. Like, it was just like this terrible thing. And Absalom is so mad. And yet David does not recognize or deal with or do anything with this. So then if Absalom tries to overturn his father, like, did it come out of nowhere? Like, there are reasons for this. And then you talk about, people brought up Eli and his sons. And this is the same thing again. Eli, the Bible talks that Eli did not discipline his sons. He saw what his sons were doing. They were sleeping with women, using the prostitutes, taking all the offerings. They were so terrible. And they would just demand, and they would take what they wanted from all the offerings of God. Eli saw this, and he would try to rebuke them, and they didn't listen to their father. Like, that's a problem already. And he never even bothered removing them from their post then. What is he doing? Nothing. And then later on, when Samuel is given a word from the Lord and Eli's like, no, tell me what he said. And Samuel didn't want to tell him because he's like, this is terrible. He basically said, God says your family is just going to be removed. They're not going to be leaders anymore. Everything is gone. And it's because you failed to discipline your sons. I mean, like, okay, we're not talking now about like the choices of these. And then in the end, that his sons were struck down and died. And so we're not talking about like the actual choices that these kids are making as adults. We're talking about the responsibility that the parents have. And so why I also say that men who are leaders in the church who have prodigal children must step down. They are not of sound mind. Okay? I mean, like in Titus 1:7, 6:7, it says, 6:7, his children must be believers who don't have a reputation for being wild or rebellious. I mean, it's just very clear. They can't be wild or rebellious. And so if they are, they have to step down. Because why? They can't lead. If they can't lead, like, where are they leading from? I mean, like, they are in grieving, they're mourning. They need to figure out and clean up their own house and figure out what's happening and what needs to change. And I'm not saying that they can never go back into leadership, but what I personally think should happen, and nowhere in the Bible does it say this, but if a person wants to be in leadership, then I think that the adult child should be asked, is there anything that your father has done to embitter you? Is there anything that you would like to share with us about his leadership ability? I mean, like, what's wrong with that? And if the kid's like, no, it was nothing about him, okay, then you can take that. I don't know. But nobody ever does that. I've never heard that being done. And then two, if they have prodigal children, how can they possibly help other families? I'm just saying, like, I would not, unless he wants to share like what he did wrong, like that's definitely a lesson that could be shared. They cannot be leaders because they can't really counsel us. Okay, they are going to be mired in their own guilt, in their own misery, whatever. It's like, whenever I talk to women, if they're struggling with their relationship, their marriage, and then I always ask, well, like, and then they say, like, my friend said this, and I ask about their friend. And so I remember this one time someone had said, like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about leaving my husband. And I asked, like, who told her that? And she had a friend. This friend was twice divorced. Okay? Of course, she's going to say that it's okay then to get divorced. She's like, oh yeah, it's great. I mean, like, you get divorced, it's not a big deal. I'm like, what? Where do you get this from? People who have lived through those things, they are going to come from that base. They're coming from that kind of foundation. Like, if a person is divorced, I would like, because I do not want to be divorced, I would like to learn, what kind of regrets do you have? What kind of lessons have you learned? That's what I'd like to share. Like, I'm not going to them for marriage advice on how to keep my marriage alive. You see what I'm saying? And it's the same thing. If a person has prodigal children, I just don't want to hear from them unless they want to tell me everything. Because that's the other thing too. I guess it's because I work so much with kids. And I have consistently seen kids leave the church. I mean, like, even growing up, the kids I went to youth group with, it was so sad. Of all of the people that I graduated, senior year, like, I think almost all of them have left the faith. And then when I work with kids, like, I see that over and over again. And I try to pour into their life. But they have a lot of hard family homes, And especially if their father is an elder or a pastor, and then all of this other stuff comes out, it's tough. And that's the thing, though, because I've actually seen kids who have parents with horrible struggles, but because it's open, their parents are not in leadership. I'm talking like just congregational members, but the parents are open about it. People know about their struggles. There's no like real secret there. Like, the kids don't leave the faith. Like, that's what the kids, they have endured through it all. And that's what I find so amazing. And that's where I just feel like when I see these deconstruction videos, if you are doing right by your children, you don't have to worry. You pray. Of course, you're going to worry as a parent. I mean, when you go into the dark place with your thoughts and stuff like that, and you're stressed out, and I get that. But what I'm saying is, if you have done everything that you can on yourself, purifying yourself, asking God, changing yourself, how can God not honor that? Am I making an absolute promise? No. I'm not God. I'm a human being. But at this point, if we as a church, like, there's always such debate about the roles of men and women in the church, right? And it always comes down to, like, whenever people talk about that, it's always like, oh, my wife needs to submit. Oh, women need to submit. That's fine. I'm fine with that. I am happy with that. I don't need to be the leader of the church, okay? I am happy with the roles that God has given to me. But then this is where then, why are you bringing that up? Focus on yourself. Be the leader that you are supposed to be. And this is where I feel like the men have to be called out. Am I a man hater? No. Okay. I have a good husband. I have wonderful sons. I have 8 nephews. I have a wonderful father, a father-in-law who has been so good to me. I mean, like, there is no toxic masculinity in my life. That's just not there. But men then need to be called out, and they need to be held accountable for the position that they want and the position that they're in. Nobody's forcing them to be a pastor or an elder or whatever. Okay? But if you want it, then your life should show it. And the people that are closest to you should be able to approve of what you're doing. And I think that for me, sometimes when I hear, like, it's like the guy is like totally messed up and the wife is always trying to say, like, oh no, it's not like that, like, you're being judgmental, like, we try. They themselves, as the wife, as one flesh with your husband, you need to be held accountable too. If you are in leadership positions in the church, you are with your husband, you need to be held accountable also. They need to be held accountable. These wives need to be held accountable. Who else is closest to their husband? So when I see some of these pastors fall, and then, like, the wife, I don't know, you can say I'm so mean, but for me, I have a lot of power as a woman. If my husband is in ministry, you can bet sure that I will do everything I can to make sure that he is living an honest life before the Lord. I can't fathom not going through his computer. I will check that stuff. His friends aren't going to do it. I'll check his phone. Okay. I go through his finances. I mean, I run the finances, but that's what I'm saying. It's just that like we also have just this accountability to come around each other and to hold each other to the standards that the Bible has. And it's not one-sided. I just don't want to hear this whole thing of like men always being like, oh, my wife needs to submit. That's not the point. Don't focus on somebody else. You have to focus on you. And when you see these kids, these adult children who are walking away, we have to look at the leadership that they have been given and what is going on. It may be nothing, but I'm just telling you from my own experience of observing, I'm sure at this point, hundreds, I say hundreds, but it could be even more than that, right? Hundreds of families, that in the end, there's a lot of people who are not living for the Lord. Okay. Bye.